Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party, as well as being County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We hope you and your families had a wonderful New Year's, and we are very hopeful that you'll have a wonderful, healthy, and happy New Year as well. Jesse, good to talk to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, and I'm sorry I missed last week's show. But it's good to get the new year started with new challenges, new optimism, and new topics. So I want to wish everyone a wonderful, healthy, prosperous, and a safe new year in 2025.
So when you and I were putting the show together, we decided that the way we would frame the discussion is welcome to a new year. And this is a time for optimism, but it has its challenges, its concerns, but it also has its opportunities. And I think that's a good way to look at it. One of the great myths that people have is that when you start a new year, it's a new beginning. And most respectfully, I think it's a naive point of view, because when you go into the new year, you go into all that was behind you the day before. All the problems, all the concerns, all the opportunities, all the challenges, all the reasons for pessimism or optimism, it's still there. Nothing has really changed except a day on the calendar, Jesse. And I think people have to realize that. It's the same thing, when people make these New Year's resolutions and they say, somebody who's totally sedentary, all of a sudden they're going to start doing Pilates or do weightlifting. Or people who constantly are gaining weight, all of a sudden they're going to go on a super diet and trim down to their high school weight. It doesn't work that way. And people who have no interest in sports and hobbies and old movies or concerts or plays, all of a sudden they're going to rekindle that youthful enthusiasm and go forward. So I think that's naive. Having said that, I do think it's an opportunity to make small changes. So in terms of changes, let me begin our discussion by saying to you on optimism. We have a new American administration. And I have to say to you, this is a chance to clean up the mistakes of the Obama-Biden years. Will they totally be cleaned up? Absolutely not. It requires a unity of purpose amongst the Republicans, and we can be talking about that, a unity of purpose for the Democrats to be responsible opposition and not to thwart everything that Donald Trump and his administration are trying to do. It's going to have to be love of country and doing the right thing for America and for Western civilization, and not just your own parochial partisan interests. So what say you about optimism in this new administration, this new year?
Well, I agree with you, Your Honor. I mean, I'm one of those people who ate far too much over the holidays. And, I'm going to refocus myself on my discipline and my diet. But you're absolutely right. The same problems that occurred or were with us on December 31st are still with us on December 1st. But I think you hit upon it. There are small changes that be made. But I think more importantly, those small changes or changes in general are going to be executed from a fundamental change in their approach. And I believe that's what the Trump presidency that will begin in about 17 days is what it is all about. It's going to be a return to common sense, a return to the fundamental responsibilities of government, of, a strong economy, a strong national security, a strong security within our borders, and a strong quality of life here in America. And from there, everything can change. And I do believe that, and I feel it in my soul. And, last week I gathered with several hundred of our party loyalists. We had between Christmas and New Year's just a family breakfast, just to get together and mostly to tell stories about the campaign cycle, their thoughts about 2025, and of course, the story, to hear about their holidays. But I have not seen the optimism as I have now. There's a resurgence. It seems that all the hard work that these individuals and Americans throughout the country, New Yorkers throughout the state, Long Islanders throughout our region have been clamoring for and have been working towards, they feel it's going to come to roost. And I think that it's going to be successful because, listen, as you said, there's small changes. But I believe that this time Donald Trump, as opposed to 2017 when he took office on January 20th of that year, is better prepared. We've seen it in his appointments. We've seen it in his use of language. We've seen it on him outline what his vision. And let's not forget, people who sometimes may still cringe, or the Democrats or whatever may have a problem with what he says or what he's doing. For the last 4 years, he has put forward his plan for America before the American people, was rewarded with 317 electoral votes and a popular vote victory at the ballot box. So the people want this type of change. But what he's doing is that now what he's campaigned on, he's executing through his personnel. And this is what we're going to be seeing on day one. We know very clearly what Donald Trump is going to do on day one of his administration, on the first 100 days of his administration, on the first year of his administration. It's being laid out and has been laid out to the American people. And I believe that is what we want to see as Americans: a return of American exceptionalism, a return to American innovation, a return to American patriotism, and a return to American security, and an American-led global presence on the diplomatic, and sometimes, unfortunately, we have to operate through peace, through strength.
Well, I think that's very well said. This is my concern. First of all, as you know me, and we've been friends and colleagues for years now, I'm always cautiously optimistic. But during the course of the Biden-Harris administration, and looking backward at the Obama legacy, and also going back to the Carter legacy, it gave me a sense of pessimism, Jesse, that I never had before. I thought America was on the brink. I think the election of Donald Trump in a Republican Senate and a Republican House gives me cause for optimism again, that we can regain our footing, come back as the world leader we should be, treat our people in the United States fairly and decently and respectfully, get our allies back on the proper course, and confront the many challenges that we have. I'm optimistic again. I wasn't optimistic throughout the fall because the campaign against Donald Trump from the very beginning, the lawfare that was waged against him, the attempt to knock him off the ballots on ridiculous, specious grounds, the civil suits brought by Attorney General of New York to try to bankrupt him, the allegations of sexual abuse that were found by a jury from allegations of decades ago with harsh penalties against him. All of this was very, very troubling to me, that you had a combination of federal prosecutors being controlled out of the White House and the Garland Justice Department covering up the Bidens and their grifting and their influence peddling and the vast amounts of money that was going their way with America's enemies and questionable allies. All of that was very, very troubling to me. The fact that the media covered up the inadequacies, the incompetence of Biden, that the political leadership of the Democratic Party, both in the Democratic National Committee, the governors, the Congress people, the senators, the White House staff, all of them covered it up. That was profoundly troubling to me. And then they nominated, because they finally, after he disgraced himself at the debate, they nominated a raging mediocrity who's an affirmative action candidate, who's only selected to be the candidate for vice president because of a political deal to stop Bernie Sanders and to secure the African-American vote. Turns out what we got is we got somebody who's totally incapable of being vice president, let alone president. And we got a left-wing agenda that could have been Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders agenda. Everything they wanted, they were getting. And that was very troubling to me. But now I'm optimistic again. I think something can be done. With this caveat, Jesse, this is a concern of mine. Will the Republican Party be realistic and govern responsibly? Now, the first test of that, Jesse, is the Friday vote on January 3rd, where Speaker Johnson is up for re-election to the speakership. And it's a very tight vote there because while the Republicans won the House, they didn't win it overwhelmingly as much as they should have won it. And in fact, I believe, in my humble opinion, one of the reasons they didn't do better in the House races is because they acted like a bunch of clowns a couple of years ago when they went after Kevin McCarthy, who's a very fine leader and a very fine speaker. They knocked him out of the box, and they showed they're irresponsible, and they went on for, I don't know, days or weeks, Jesse, and they had, 15 votes for the speakership. If that happens again on January 3rd, that's awful, because that will undermine the Trump agenda. It will weaken the Trump initiative. It will slow everything down. He only has a year and a half to really get stuff done, as you know, as a political guru, because by the second year of the term, everybody's going to be running again for re-election in 2026. So people don't pay much attention in 2026, only at the few months at the beginning. So this is very, very troubling. They have to get behind Speaker Johnson. He's an able man. He's a decent man. He's a God-fearing man. He's a conservative, but he's centrist. He listens to everybody. He effectively led the body when they deep-sixed Kevin McCarthy. They have to have the unity, which, by the way, the Democrats always have the unity. And Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader, has already said not one single vote is going to be there for Speaker Johnson from the Democratic side. So much for the Common Sense Caucus, so much for no labels. They've shown themselves to be nothing but lemmings, political hacks, just supporting the Democrats. They should be voting for Johnson because he's a decent man if they love this country and they respect their institution. What say you?
I agree with you. For love of country and the love of and the service of American people, they should vote for Johnson. But I'll differ with you in this area. Number one, the Republican caucus, whether it's in Washington and Albany or here in Suffolk County or in Nassau County and any legislative chamber, the Republican majority needs to take care of its own business. It should not have to rely upon a deal making with Democrats to do that. The Democrats have nothing to lose, everything to gain, so that's why they're playing their game, and that's because they want a continuation of their failed policies. But let's go back to Speaker Johnson. Speaker Johnson was dealt a very difficult hand. He came out of the chute with a caucus that had embarrassed itself, a Republican majority that had embarrassed itself by ousting its leader, and then going through a second protracted succession plan. First, it began in the beginning of the Congress with McCarthy, where it took several days and about 15 votes. Then it came with the ouster of Speaker McCarthy. Right now, I think that I know that this is the most conservative speaker that has served in the House of Representatives. You're not going to get a more conservative speaker. He has the support of all of his colleagues. And, unfortunately, when you have a majority that is razor thin, and I believe that that's not as a result of the efforts of Speaker Johnson. The fact that we have a Republican majority in the House of Representatives is because of Speaker Johnson.
I agree with that.
And his team.
No, I think
because,
the reason
again,
you don't have a larger majority in the House is because of these dissident people who made a fiasco of the whole McCarthy-Johnson election.
The American people were saying, if they can't govern themselves, how are they going to govern America? So Speaker Johnson was already behind the eight ball when he took the gavel, but he excelled at it. I believe he went to 35 states. He made 117 visits to different congressional districts and counties and such. He's the man that should be it. And when this airs, it is my hope that on the first ballot, Republicans come together and move forward. Because here's the thing. The House of Representatives Republican majority, the Senate majority on the other side of the Capitol, and the White House was given a charge by the American people. Get things done. Return to the fundamental rules, fundamental requirements and obligations and commitments and responsibilities of government. They voted against the status quo. They voted against the deep state. They voted this past November against the embedded bureaucracy. They want America to be, and the American institutions, restored to their prominence, to their independence, and they want the American promise back for everyone, not just a chosen few that Democrat elitists pick and choose around their tables. This is something that needs to move forward. I believe that I am hopeful that the Republican conference, despite ideology, moves forward and elect Speaker Johnson. He needs to get done because we need to ratify this election on January 6th, which is the day after this show airs.
Isn't that the problem, Jesse? You just hit it.
Exactly.
If they don't have a speaker in place by January 6th, you cannot ratify the election of Donald Trump as president.
And watch the Democrat shenanigans then. So watch as the American people look at Democrat shenanigans, the circus act that the mainstream media will jump on to make Republicans in Washington look foolish. And here's the thing. We don't have an hour to waste as Republicans to change what happens here in America. We don't have a day. We don't have a legislative session. We don't have a month. We have no time, because any fruitful change in philosophy, in ideology, in policies and bureaucracies, whatever we do on day one is not going to be felt for several days later. Delaying that appointment, delaying that election of Speaker Johnson, because there is no credible
alternative. There's no alternative. There's nobody who can build a support.
Mary Taylor Greene saying that, when she's being of the mind of being common sense when it comes to Speaker Johnson, you know that this is just, I hope it's just saber rattling, because it needs to change. So we need to get the work done. We need to show the American people that Republicans in the White House, the Congress, and the Senate can get things done, that they were sent to Washington to do and enact. And the best way of doing that, let's do our normal business, elect Speaker Johnson immediately on January 3rd, ratify this election on January 6th, and let's get legislating on behalf of the American people. Let's secure our border. Let's attack the economy by lowering inflation. Let's begin the processes of extending the Trump tax cuts of 2017, adding SALT to that as well. Let's restore our military to its strength. As I said, first and foremost, making us energy independent through executive orders. And let's have Congress begin that process as a full partner with the White House.
That's so well said. People sometimes say, you're not a Democrat, Judge Weinberg, you're a Republican. No, I am a Democrat. But I like to believe that I'm a common sense Democrat, a centrist Democrat, a Democrat who understands that you should never make the good, the perfect, the enemy of the good. The perfect can never be the enemy of the good. That's an ancient teaching from the ancient Greeks. You need to get things done in a centrist way. Sometimes you have to trade horses. Sometimes you can't get everything you want. But the question is, if you look at all the issues that confront us, you did a wonderful job of articulating those concerns and those challenges. If you look at that, when Chip Roy of Texas and Massey of Kentucky say they're not there for Johnson, who are they there for? For the Democratic Party, the Hakeem Jeffries Party, which has allowed itself, and the Nancy Pelosi Party, which has allowed itself to cover up for an incompetent, corrupt presidency, a party that moved us so far left that we don't even recognize this country in terms of its values, where men can go into women's bathrooms, where they can play in women's sports, where pronouns are more important than national security. I mean, what is wrong with these guys? Look at the whole tableau of issues. Where do you stand overwhelmingly with? And you stand with Johnson. Hakeem Jeffries could actually, through a fluke, get himself elected Speaker of the House if you don't have the Republicans supporting him. And I'm telling you, if the House is lost to the Democrats, then you will never get all the important issues resolved that will make this country safe and better again. That's the problem, Jesse. This vote on a Friday is enormously important. It's time for the Republican Party to get united the same way the Democrats are, to be realistic about what it can do and govern responsibly. And I'm very hopeful. And I know Senator Thune, John Thune, who's the new majority leader of the United States Senate, I know Senator Thune very well. And I am telling you, we are so lucky to have people of the integrity, the character, the ability, the vision, the work ethic of people like Senator Thune and Speaker Johnson leading the Republican Party. Because my party, the Democratic Party, has dismally failed this country. And it's time we have to get back to basics, protecting the United States of America, protecting Western civilization, having a viable, successful economy, a place of opportunity for all, being colorblind like we should be, and not be doing things that are based on race or national origin. Do the right thing by America. Chip Roy, Massey, vote for Johnson. This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Please stay with us for more important and interesting conversations. We'll be back in but a few moments.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. So, Jesse, I want to raise this issue with you. We were just talking about the Republican Party and is it going to be realistic and govern responsibly. One of my concerns is, will the Democratic Party be a loyal, responsible opposition, or continue to be a captive of extreme ideological left wing. And I've seen these pronouncements, these press conferences, these statements by Chuck Schumer, the current majority leader of the United States Senate, about to be the minority leader of the United States Senate. And he's putting together an opposition to Trump's policies. He's trying to get the governors and the local mayors and the senators in his House of Congress, as well as Democrats in the House side and the House of Representatives, all in a unity campaign to block the Trump agenda. Where does Schumer think he is? His party has been repudiated. The Democratic Party has been repudiated. Their vision of political correctness, diversity, equity, inclusion, of identity politics, of tax and spend, of reckless disregard for the threats that face this country, of an open border, of a unity of interest of our enemies going after us. That disregard by the Democratic Party has put us in a weak position. We have to rally behind President Trump and his administration. Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, get the job done to protect America. What is wrong with Chuck Schumer going around saying he's going to lead the charge against Trump's agenda? What are your thoughts, Jesse?
My thoughts are very simple. The Democrats face two choices, two paths. Do they change course from a failed policy that was, as you said, repudiated in no uncertain terms, in overwhelming numbers by the American people? Or, do they return and double down on the failure of socialism and such? This is an opportunity for America to break away from the policies and as you discussed earlier, the pessimism that has run through America, except for a brief period of time under the first Trump administration, that has been placed upon us by the Obamas, the Bidens, the Harris administrations, and of course the Democratic majorities when they control the U.S. Senate, the House, or our chambers, or our state houses. This is an opportunity for them to do that. Our system was to have a vocal minority so that we could have a debate and such. But if you ask me, I believe that there's one thing that's going to be dominating everything right now, and that is the shooting, the gun start to the Democratic process, Democratic primary process for the presidential nomination in 2028. And I think that's what the Democrats are doing. That's what we're seeing in these blue state governors, Newsom, the Illinois governor, and many others. They're all moving forward. You're even seeing it in some blue city mayors like that in Chicago. But you also see some cracks in that, some hope in that the will and the needs of the American people are going to come forward. You have mayors like Mayor Adams and the mayor of D.C. who are looking for common ground to address failures in their cities based on their policies and the policies brought upon them by the Biden, Harris, and Obama administrations. So now it's time for them, the Democrats, to choose. If you ask me, I believe the Democrats are going to choose the more antagonistic, politically based, try and clamp down every policy there is to double down on their lawfare with whatever remnants of influence they have in these agencies or in these state houses, because for them, the American people don't come first. For them, their own political ambitions, their influence, their greed, that comes first.
Their lust for power and control.
Their lust for power and control. You said it in 3 words. It took me 12. But that's why you're good at what you do. But that's what it is. Their lust for power. That's what they want to maintain. That's more important than the middle-class Americans or middle-class New Yorkers or middle-class Long Island region Long Island regional voters. But I do believe, and this is why we say it's important, let's get to business on day one. Let's not mess around. Let's move forward. Let's get the agenda going. Let's join President Trump when he enacts those first wave of executive orders that releases the American innovation, closes the border, secures the border, allows us to on the path of energy independence, because energy independence hits the economy, affects the economy, every aspect of the economy. Gas goes up, oil goes up, transportation goes up, costs go up, delivery services go up, the cost of manufacturing goods go up. You make America energy independent again, and inflation and costs will come down at a record level. And we need to begin that process on day one. If the Democrats want to go down the same path that they have over the last 12 years, good riddance. God bless you. You learned not one lesson. As Republicans, we learn our lessons. We adjust our sails. We tack to serve the people of America and the people that we have sworn to serve. For Democrats, these elitists, socialists, and progressives, they only care about one thing, and you said it, the lust for power.
Well, that raises the issue, Jesse, and this is related to this. They have an ideology that's truly frightening. It's an ideology that really has no respect for the constitutional system established by the founding fathers, which has given us reasonable and rational government for the last almost 250 years.
And there's no tolerance.
And that's
tolerance.
It. Thank you very, very much. That's exactly the right word. What separates out people? You know, all these ideologies that have this lust for power, the lust for power is also the corollary to the lust for power is the lust to dominate. They want to dominate their fellow human beings, whether you talk about the Nazis, whether you talk about the communists, whether you talk about the left-wing radical Islamists, whether you talk about any true believers on the right, you know, the Ku Klux Klan types. They have this lust for power, but it's a lust to dominate. It's a lust to suppress freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to be left alone by government and your fellow human beings unless you're hurting somebody else. It's an understanding that man is not a perfect creature. Man has opportunities, but man also has challenges and dangers. Man has to understand that there is such a thing as good in the world and there's such a thing as evil in the world. And our founding fathers understood that power had to be checked, it had to be balanced. Checks and balances, separation of powers, all has to go to checking the worst impulses of the humankind. And one of the worst impulses of humankind, when we talk about dominating thought and language and speech, is this whole wokeism creation. What they've done is they've taken away your ability to speak properly. It's almost Orwellian, like in George Orwell's 1984. And they've resurrected and created identity politics by the group. There's no such thing as individual merit. They have destroyed the ethos of meritocracy in America. It still lives amongst some of us, but the left, in their mind, has destroyed it. It has to go. Meritocracy has to die. Freedom of opportunity based on merit has to die. It's all about results. It's not equality of opportunity, Jesse. The measurement is equality of the results, and they will divvy out and reapportion the winners and the losers based on their needs for power, dominance, and their worldview. So are we going to see in the next 4 years the death of wokeism and the resurrection of meritocracy in America?
I believe we are. I think the American people are sick of it. They want to be able to speak what they feel and say and not with hate and not what creates hate and divisiveness is when you tell people what you can and cannot say. That's what creates divisiveness, you know, and such. But let's be honest, you know, wokeism and these cancel culture, it's a control of language that the Democrats want to impose because they want to stifle debate. They want to stifle ideas. They want to stifle independent thinking. It's their failures in policy and in the way they executed them and then protected them with their partners in the mainstream media and their elitist corporations and such is that it gave rise to conspiracy theorists. And let's be honest, some of the conspiracy theories that we heard and maybe people scoffed at 4 or 5 years ago have come to be true. I mean, let's just use one that everyone agrees with. Everyone thought it was a conspiracy theory. They all thought it was MAGA Republicans that were only believing that the Hunter Biden laptop was a Russia hoax.
A Russia hoax and
disinformation.
Disinformation. How ridiculous! And they knew. But the trouble is, they so corrupted the institutions that the FBI suppressed it. They knew.
Exactly. And the truth does come out. It may take weeks, months, years, but the truth does come out. The truth is coming out of the suppressed information of what actually happened on January 6th of 2021. The truth is coming out on what happened with that laptop. So the so-called conspiracy theorists are now being validated because we have a commander-in-chief and we had a House Republican majority, thankfully, that investigated this, released documents, and released their own unbiased reports. They led where the evidence took them, as opposed to the Democrats stacking the deck for the purposes of eliminating a political opponent that they had foresight more than 5 years ago. Maybe even they had foresight 7, 8 years ago, that there was a force and a connection in Donald Trump that was with the American people. I will tell you that they may have seen that foresight in why they started this process. And it will actually put it on steroids that began under the first Obama administration, continued through Biden and Harris, and is now going to be picked up. The mantle of this information and this objections is going to be picked up by Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and the Democrats in Washington.
Well, Jesse, from the day he announced the presidential campaign at Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, and he's going down the escalator, the war had begun. They had made up their mind they were going to take this guy out under any circumstances. This is a man of such resilience. He fought all those years through his presidency, 2 phony impeachments, federal investigations by tanked federal prosecutors, totally in the tank, totally irresponsible, totally being guided by the Justice Department and the White House on fraudulent charges. 2 state prosecutors, one the DA of Manhattan, the other DA in Fulton County in Georgia. All nonsense, all to stymie this guy, to put him in jail. They try to kill him twice. People try to kill him twice. And yet he was resilient. He got up and he said, fight, fight, fight. And I say to you, I don't know which is the chicken or the egg in this phenomena that we call Trump. Was it that Trump understood the feelings of the American people, their alienation from this extreme cult of wokeism and radical left ideology, and he just captured the moment, and he became the spokesperson and the carrier of that movement? Or did he so understand the corruption of America and what was going on that he rekindled the fundamental values of America, and he was helping to define those basic values again? And you know what? I don't know that we really need to know the answer to that question that I just posed, the chicken or the egg. I think we now know that there's overwhelming majority of the people in this country, as reflected, as you correctly pointed out, in the electoral vote, in the popular vote, in the winning of all the so-called swing states, that the map of this United States has moved in the direction of common sense, centralism, responsible government. Jesse, we have to take a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us for the final segment of this week's Let the Record Show.
This is Let the Record Show. This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the vice chair of the New York State Republican Party, the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse, I want to open up this third and final segment of this week's show by recognizing two breaking news events that have happened since we last chatted. One is the death of former President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, and the other is this terror attack that just occurred in New Orleans on the eve of the Sugar Bowl. And I believe that's a terrorist attack, and I think it should be investigated that way, it should be recognized that way, and confronted that way. And we need to find out who this guy was. Was he aided and abetted by anybody? How did he get into this country? Was he homegrown here, or did he break the border that Biden and Harris, Mayorkas, opened up? So let's begin with the Jimmy Carter. I have my own strong feelings about Jimmy Carter and his legacy or his lack of legacy, but I want you to start and tell me what you think of Carter as a president, Carter as the man.
First, as a man, my prayers and our thoughts, I think all of America's prayers and thoughts go out to the Carter family. I think President Carter was a man of faith. He was well-intentioned. He was a good man and principled. Unfortunately, his presidency was an utter and complete failure, eclipsed only by 40 years later by the Biden administration. The 1980 presidential election was 14 years old.
Don't exclude what Obama did to this country.
Exactly.
This
is true.
I wish I could exclude it, but you can't. It's part of
me too, in many ways. But in going through that, it was a failure of a presidency, and I do believe he did good in his post-political career, Habitat for Humanity and Carter Center and such. But unfortunately, his ideology, his policies, that was really the start of the Democrats' American pessimism.
The malaise. He called it in his own speech, the malaise. Right.
The malaise, exactly. And it took Ronald Reagan to make America great again. As we know, it was that campaign, his campaign, that coined that phrase, and aptly picked up by Donald Trump. We needed two conservatives, two disruptors of the status quo to take us out of that malaise, and that's what we have. But I do think that he was Jimmy Carter. Again, he was a man of faith. I believe he was well-intentioned. He was a good man, but unfortunately, he had both chambers of the Congress, and his policies were a complete failure that set this country back. That's why this country needed, a bit of a movement and revolution in the form of
Reagan,
Ronald Reagan. Thank you. And now why we needed, after Obama and Harris and
you said Biden there. That was a good Freudian slip. Biden.
I know. Exactly. But that's why we needed another disruptor, another revolution to get back to the basics of the American people.
Well, let me take it from a different, there's an ancient, I think it's Shakespeare said, you're not supposed to speak ill of the dead. So I will say that I am told, I never met Jimmy Carter, so I don't know the man. I'm told by many people that he's very, very bright. I don't know that. I'll give them that. But I'll tell you what he was. He was totally unprepared for the presidency. He was a terrible president. He may have been one of the worst presidents we've ever had. He set us down a very dangerous path. The economy was in shambles when Reagan took it over. Inflation was super high numbers. He didn't rekindle the American spirit. He suppressed all that was good in terms of innovation and the energy of America. He talked about the malaise. The malaise wasn't in Americans, President Carter. The malaise was in your weakness and your lack of vision. Now, let me point out certain things that live to this day because of the failures of Mr. Carter. Number one, in his famous speech, besides his malaise speech, he talked about, we were too obsessed by communism, and we shouldn't be so obsessed by it, we can work with them. As a result of that speech, that was encouragement, the same way Biden encouraged Putin to go in to Ukraine, a small incursion. That was an encouragement to the Russians to go into Afghanistan and create this crazy Islamic cults coming out of Afghanistan that rallied against Russia. So Afghanistan, a broken country in any event, became worse and was taken over by Islamic radical anti-Western fundamentalists. That came out of Russia jumping into Afghanistan. The second thing he did is the Ayatollah Khomeini. He allowed Khomeini to return from Paris to go to Iran. Never should have happened. He sabotaged, undermined, marginalized the Shah of Iran. He was America's ally. He never should have done that. Khomeini came in with a hatred towards America, Western civilization, Israel, calling Israel the little Satan, America the great Satan. That's where that language comes from. That comes from the Ayatollah Khomeini, the number one Ayatollah of his time, and who won and resurrected Islamic fundamentalism in what was a very secular country, Iran, and a U.S. ally. And don't forget the hostages being taken for 444 days, laughing at us, humiliating us. What did that do? It showed American weakness. And when you show American weakness, it only encourages those people who have a radically different vision of the world and who believe in domination, control, hegemony, as the Greeks call it. So that's Carter's legacy there. Now, let me, on another note, which is not often talked about, is he had a very hostile relationship to the Jewish community in America. He also had a very hostile relationship with the Jewish state of Israel. He was an apologist for Hamas and other extreme radical Islamist groups. He even helped, when he left office, he even helped people like the Hamas leaders and the PLO leaders to write speeches so they were more appealing to Western audiences, because Western audiences do not believe that they're dealing with a different kind of person, with a different kind of mindset. They're very secular, most part, even when they're religious. They're very rational. They don't understand the obsession of extreme religious orthodoxy. Carter didn't understand that. He worked with these people, gave them speeches to articulate. When everybody said, oh, you could work with these people. We're still making that naive mistake. Obama had it, and Biden had it. So this is very, very, very dangerous. And then when Jewish people throughout the world went out of their way to criticize Carter and point out his flaws and his thinking about this religious cult of Islamist extremism, he just says, well, I have a Jewish problem. The Jews just don't like me. No, the Jews had nothing against you, Mr. Carter. What they had was a concern and a fear that extreme radical Islamic theologians were leading a movement to destroy Western civilization. They saw it ahead of time, and he missed it. So that's my thoughts on Jimmy Carter. Let me switch gears. I want to ask you about this terrible, terrible, awful, people calling it a tragedy in New Orleans that just took place. Jesse, I submit to you, this is not a tragedy. A tragedy is God forbid, an airplane goes down, or somebody gets run over by a car crossing the street. That's a tragedy. This was deliberate attempt to destroy human beings for a political, ideological statement. This was a guy who at this moment in time killed at least 10 people, and the body count may go up in terms of deaths, injured another few dozen or maybe more. There were weapons found in the car. There were also around the explosives found in the scene. This was a person totally dedicated to human destruction to make an ideological point. The FBI has not acknowledged that yet. They're saying they're investigating as a possible act of terror. Give me a break. It has all the earmarks of an act of terror. And it's a terrible way to start off the new year. But if it awakens the American people and the West to the fact that we have a real threat on our hands and it's not going away by wishful thinking, maybe we'll serve a purpose. Your thoughts?
Yes, my thoughts and prayers go out to those 10 who are dead. And as you said, the body count may go up. Certainly, there are about 30 injured here. I agree with you that, I don't understand how the FBI in the first few hours can say and rule out terrorism when there hasn't been a fully investigated part of this. And honestly, I do believe a little bit of saving face for the administration and for the FBI is falling upon their decision-making process. American people want answers, but they want thorough, well-thought-out answers, investigated answers. They will accept and take time for you to get this thing, to get this to the root cause of these matters. This is, very similar to a tragic event that happened in Germany in the Christmas market that happened just during this Christmas season and seems to happen.
Again, not a tragedy, deliberate act of terrorism, Jesse.
A deliberate act of terrorism, but it's tragic for those families.
Of course,
I think that's where
that
we're going to. The assailant died in a firefight, and I do credit the law enforcement issues that brought that to an end. But you're absolutely right about this. I mean, this has to serve as a wake-up call for domestic terrorism, for terrorism from a foreign entity, from, where these individuals came from. I don't understand how the FBI so quickly could rule out something unless they knew something going forward, that something was imminent. And I don't think they did. If they did and they allowed this to happen, shame on them. Again, another failure. But I hope that that's not the case. This has to act as you pointed out, as a reminder that there are the barbarians at the gate. There are people who have infiltrated our countrysides, our neighborhoods, every neighborhood, as we said, with an open border that the Democrats have given us, unsecured. We have human trafficking. We have incidents such as this possibly. We have the Chinese sending fentanyls and operatives through an open border. We have cartels controlling apartment buildings and communities throughout the country because it is unsecure border. And that is job one, to secure this border so that we can finally begin the process of keeping our neighborhoods safe and imposing law enforcement, proper laws, our laws on those who want to bring us harm. Again, I am very concerned that the FBI was so quick in their judgment. I would love to see how they reached that conclusion so quickly.
I don't know if they reached it. I don't know if they said this was not an act of terrorism as much as they said it's too early to say that's an act of terrorism.
Exactly.
But they're waffling. But it's clear they're waffling.
It's all about how you paint the narrative, and that's what they're doing in here. And listen, I don't want people to be alarmists. Just be honest. We're examining whether this was. We're examining the origins of this individual. We're examining where he got his weapons. We're examining where he holed up and planned this out. We're examining how he got into this country. We're examining if he's a citizen. We're examining whether this was an act of domestic terror or terror from abroad. Just simply say that to the American people. The American people who you've lied to, this administration and the Obama administration has lied to for so long, will give you the benefit of the doubt if you're straight with them. And again, that's the difference with this new year. Comes a new breath through Washington and our leaders everywhere that we're going to talk straight to the American people as opposed to giving them a song and dance and a narrative that's been checked out and based on political benefits or political consequences. That's what the American people want. That's what the American people are going to get. And I know the American people will appreciate that.
Well, let me ask you this. You have a governor of North Carolina, Democrat, who just spent his last day giving pardons to, 15 or 20 convicted murderers, okay? Mm-hmm. Commuted the sentence from the death penalty. And then you have the 9/11 terrorists who just got a break from their death penalty because of a screw-up by the prosecutors at the court and through the military system. The 9/11 terrorist, Sheikh Mohammed, whatever his name is, was a mastermind of 9/11, and they let him off the hook on the death penalty for a plea bargain. Why did they do that? What is so wrong with the Democratic Party that they don't understand that there are certain people who are so evil, so depraved, such a danger to everyone else, all decent people, all innocent potential victims, that the death penalty is the right thing to do? Don't talk to me about the sanctity of life when you laughingly give pardons to murderers. who've been convicted and have had all their appeals exhausted. Don't give me the sanctity of life when you talk about somebody who took down the Trade Center and killed all those people, who attacked the Pentagon, who were going to go after the White House. What are you talking about, sanctity of life? You're just talking gibberish. You're talking words. You're talking Kamala Harris word salad. The sanctity of life can only be vindicated when you show a seriousness of purpose to rid the world of dangerous people who've earned not another breath in this life and who continue to be a threat. Well, Jesse, I hate to end this show on that segment. I want to begin again by saying we have to be responsible. We have to be grown-ups. We have to be realistic. I'm optimistic. I think your words of wisdom are very, very important to meeting all the challenges and the concerns and the opportunities that we face in this new year. I look forward to having another great year with you, Jesse, on Let the Record Show. And to our audience, we wish you Godspeed, a wonderful, healthy, and happy new year. And Jesse and I look forward to being with you again next week on Let the Record Show. Thank you for listening.
This is Let the Record Show.
Memorial Day doorbuster deals are here at Lowe's. Right now, Rewards members save $80 on the Master Forge 4-burner gas grill, now just $149. Plus, Rewards members save $900 on the Lowe's exclusive Hisense French door refrigerator, now only $999. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 5/26. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowe's.com/terms. Subject to change.